Welcome to Issues of Contemporary Politics with Dr. Brovkin. Today, my dear friends, I'd like to focus on three new developments in the ongoing saga of the Russian-Ukrainian war. A big controversy exploded in the alternative media sources concerning the so-called issue of Tomahawk missiles. This is one. The second one is the discussion as to why the Russian advance is so slow. And indeed, it is not fast. The battle for Pokrovsk has been going on for many, many months. And the third issue is, as had been the problem for many, many months as well, is the EU and it is belligerent position vis-a-vis Russia, but more specifically, the hysteria over the Russian drones, or what claim to be Russian drones, and the latest statement by Madame von der Leyen to the effect that EU is practically in the state of what she said, hybrid war with Russia. So these are the three issues I'd like to address today. And I shall start with the thesis on Russian slow advance. Now, in my previous video, I have already cited Dr. Gilbert Doctorow, an analyst and historian of Russia, whom, as I said before, I respect highly. And he again addressed this issue of Russian slow advance. And his thesis is that Ukrainians are far from beaten, that they are in the condition to resist Russian army for quite some time, that drone warfare makes quick advance pretty much impossible. And on that, he pretty much repeats the views of General Zaluzhny and the claim by General Kellogg, the special envoy of Trump in Ukraine, and many others who basically say things are not as bad as they seem to be. Russian advance is very, very slow, and drone warfare makes it pretty much impossible to quick advance, because everything, as soon as it moves or appears, is destroyed within minutes. The second item, why Russian advance is going to be slow, is, according to Doctorow, is that beyond the Dnieper River is a hostile territory, and the more west Russian troops move, the more they will encounter a hostile nationalist Ukrainian population that would make it the advance even more difficult. So let me address some of these issues because they are really quite crucial for the understanding. Now, I also, just like Mr. Doctor, I listen regularly, pretty much on a daily basis, to what the Russians are saying, Russian generals, Russian diplomats in a variety of talk shows and others. And what General Sivkov had said many, many times is that Russian army is in the capacity to move fast and to destroy the Kiev regime, as he put it, if need be. But the political leadership, and by that he means Putin, has a decision to move slowly. Now, Sivkov and others said that he disagrees with this policy, but that is the political decision and it has its merits. So why are the Russians advancing slowly? Well, one of the major reasons that has been already pointed out many times is that the territory where the warfare is going on is officially the territory of the Russian Federation, because the four provinces have been joined to Russia. It's already 3 years. And therefore, these are Russian citizens. And if there is they cannot bombard villages and towns. They cannot have carpet bombing. They cannot, even when they do hit some of the strategic targets in these territories, they do it very, very carefully, so that to minimize the civilian casualties. So this is number one. The citizens in these territories are Russian citizens, and that makes it impossible to have a quick advance. The second, of course, is that to save the lives of Russian soldiers, by many estimates, Ukrainians are losing 10 times more soldiers than Russia. So the Russian war objective is to destroy the Ukrainian army and to make it impossible for whatever is left of Ukraine to conduct warfare against Russia for a long time to come. And that is why the purpose is not the quick advance, but the destruction of the army and of the strategic assets of the Ukrainian regime. Now, the third greatest problem, of course, is that once the war advances to the highly inhabited areas, such as big cities of Kharkov, Odessa, and Dnipropetrovsk, the warfare would become impossible, because again they do not want to have street fighting, house for house, as it was in Bakhmut. So I think the strategic decision has been made to exhaust the Ukrainian regime and its army to a point that they give up, or that there is a regime change, and that way these cities would be taken without street fighting one after another. So here's the question. Here is the summary of what I believe is Putin's war aims that have become clear only in the last few weeks. Making it impossible for the Ukrainian regime to continue the war, by forcing them to accept Russian conditions, or by forcing this regime to change or to collapse and be replaced by the one that is willing to accept Russian terms. And also in terms of territory, now pretty much officially, pretty much openly, Putin is now talking in the Valdai speech and recent interviews not about just the Donbass, but the Donbass and entire Novorossiya. And as I have explained in many previous videos, Novorossiya includes Odessa and Nikolaev and Dnipropetrovsk and Kharkov. In other words, additional 4 provinces to the ones that have already joined Russia 3 years ago. So this is now pretty much official. In other words, if Zelensky had accepted Putin's conditions that were offered to Trump in July this year, that way they could have limited their losses to 4 provinces. Now the situation has changed and it is already 8 provinces. And most likely that is not the end of the story, because it seems that now the goal is regime change. Now, what I think is going to happen is as Dr. Rose said, 10 years more of fighting, but it will speed up, because Ukrainian army is exhausted, because Ukrainian people don't want to fight, because the drafting agencies are seen with great hatred everywhere, because they're known as grabbing men on the streets and shoving them without any training to the front line, because the desertion is getting to be massive. And because Russia outproduces Ukraine and EU and UK and US in war material and ammunition by far. So by all these reasons, it seems to me that the advance will speed up in the coming months. Now, let me address the issue of the Tomahawks. That too has created quite a controversy. And again, Mr. Doctorow suggested that it is a sign of weakness on the part of Putin that he refused to challenge Trump and to answer in the same way as he did when the issue of long-range missiles was under President Biden. Now, at that time, the Russians, or Putin in this case is the same thing, responded that since the long-range missiles have to be guided by American military personnel, by American satellites, by American software, and targeting, that would mean the direct participation of the United States in the war, with the consequences that the United States would be considered as a party to war. Now, this time around, when Trump, mused in his typical confusing way whether he's going to do this or whether he's going to do that, whether he's going to provide Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, Putin's, as we know, answer was quite restrained. He basically said that it would spoil American relations irrevocably. But that's it. It wouldn't mean that Russia would go to war. It wouldn't mean anything as dramatic as it was before. And of course, the legitimate question is why. And Mr. Doctorow says because Putin is weak, because he doesn't have the guts, because he should have or could have done it what the Israelis had done it in Iran, which means decapitation blow against the leadership. If you want to win, this is what you could do. You just bomb the hideouts of Zelensky, destroy that regime in a huge big blow, and finish the war. So the question is, why is Putin not doing it? Now, my view, of course, and I partly explained it before, is that it is not because Putin is weak, and it is his choice. And I will try to explain to you why it is his choice. It's very simple. You basically ask a question in a rational way. If this is done and the Tomahawk missiles are provided, will that change the course of the war? The answer is by everyone, no, it will not. Even if it hits targets inside Russia, it will not change the course of the war. Not at all. I mean, to change the course of the war, it would have to be hundreds of missiles that would hit strategic targets and make it impossible for Russia to conduct the war. That is not the case, simply because the United States does not have hundreds of Tomahawk missiles available. Okay, that's number one. Number two, will they hit the target? And here's the interesting answer that Mr. Doctorow could have checked if he watches Russian TV channels, and I did. And General Lieutenant Buzhinsky, which is one of the high-ranking Russian generals, said in a recent public broadcast of Solovyov that 96% of is the rate of American missiles, including those Tomahawks, is to be intercepted. Now, that of course means that 4% is not, and that would mean that if they're used, some of them may get through, and that could be very painful. But he gave this example that 12 Storm Shadow missiles were used at the same time in one day against the Crimean Bridge, and all 12 were intercepted. Now, some of the generals are actually a little more joking about Tomahawks, and they say, well, Americans threaten us with Tomahawks. These are the missiles of the 1980s. We have a Reshnik, which is a hypersonic missile that can destroy anything in a matter of minutes. In other words, they're kind of saying that this is not even serious. It's not even a serious threat. Tomahawks is a paper tiger in a sense that they're outdated. They can be almost all of them intercepted, and they will not be delivered in such numbers that could make a difference. And if that is so, why risk World War III in the conditions when Russia is winning? And it seems to be Putin's rational decision, not because he's afraid of Trump or because afraid of missiles, but because that is not necessary. The the threat of war could be used only if Russia was losing the war and if it was a matter of existential threat to Russia. This is concerning the Tomahawks. One more item on that is that the political effect of this statement of President Trump had been very, very negative effect on Russian public opinion. Because up to that point, there was still kind of lingering hope that maybe relations would improve and that maybe Trump would do something like a new beginning in his policy to Russia. Now they're really mad, the Russian diplomats and the analysts and all these people in the talk shows. They're really upset because they say, who is this guy to threaten Russia? With what? With Tomahawks? Come on, we have much better. And if he thinks that he can threaten Russia, well, this is what we can do. And so they discuss, this is not official position, but they discuss, this is what Russia could do. Suppose that Russia provided Oreshnik missiles or Kinzhal or one of those hypersonic missiles to Venezuela, or to Cuba, or to North Korea, or to Iran, or to some other country that feels threatened by the United States. In other words, Russia has many, many means to respond that it has not taken yet. But we do know that that there is a strategic cooperation between Russia and Cuba, Russia and Venezuela, and there's a treaty with North Korea. So when President Trump goes around the world threatening to use this or to use that, it sounds very, very strange, laughable, in fact, pathetic, because Russia is not a banana republic. It has what to respond with, and these threats are laughed at. They're not taken seriously. And finally, a couple of words about the latest shocking statement by Madame von der Leyen, is that Russian drones and Russian crossing of the borders and all this stuff is a hybrid war. The most fantastic thing about it is that there's not any proof provided whatsoever. Suppose some kids run their kites or their toy drones over some city such as Copenhagen. What proof is it that had anything to do with Russia? I mean, it just shows total paranoia, total incapacity to look at reality with realistic assessment, to claim that that any of those drones had been launched by the Russians. And even if they had been, isn't that better to try to negotiate and try to figure out what measures could be undertaken rather than simply accuse Russia and threatening war? So all that sounds extremely, in fact, pathetic. So this is all for today, my dear friends. I invite you to read my book, From Lenin to Putin. Subscribe to my channel, write your comments, and I see you very soon in the next edition of Contemporary Issues with Dr. Brovkin.